All right, all right. Another 30 teams, 30 minutes. Today I'm going to break down the Dallas Mavericks. Definitely hit the subscribe button. I'm going to break down every team and touch every team throughout the season. But this is a season preview. And this is one that I'm going to be doing for 15 minutes because I'm solo. But this is one that I wanted to do with Obi because I think I'm the only man in America who does not believe that the Luka Doncic, Trey Young discussion is over. So I guess that's a good place to start. A lot of people have put Luka Doncic, have ascended him to, rarefied air where he could be one of the gods of the game, Mount Rushmore type player. A lot of LeBron James comparisons, who I believe is the greatest player of all time, and I think those are far, far overblown. He's the MVP favorite this year, which doesn't make sense to me, and I'll get into that in a second here. But let's go just for the Luka versus Trey Young, which I talked about. So I think that the comparison of LeBron James and Luka Doncic is ridiculous. If you think about LeBron James, maybe offensively, the statistics are similar, but I think the style of approach is slightly different, but what I'll get to. But the first clear line of demarcation between the two is defense. I think Luka, he probably ends up averaging out as maybe a slightly above average defender if he works at it, or average defender at best. He's not someone, if you watch playoff series, you go hunting in the fourth quarter. Once you get to the playoffs, teams hunt out players to, attack one-on-one. As much as the game has changed to motion and passing, it still comes down to these one-on-one possessions. And you want to make sure you don't have a player that is suspect, that a team can hunt and find easy baskets on. And I don't think that Luka Doncic is ever going to be one of those players that teams are going to shy away from. Part of LeBron's greatness is his work on the defensive end. Part of his legacy is taking D Rose out his first season in Miami versus the Bulls. Part of his legacy, obviously, is the block, chase down block. Part of his legacy is taking Jamal Murray out this last postseason when the Nuggets were starting to make a comeback. And that's something that Luka Doncic, just for athletic purposes, is never going to do. We talk about style of approach. That's what I mentioned earlier. As far as how they play and how they attack the game. I remember someone made a comparison between Ben Simmons and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they were saying, well, Giannis doesn't really know how to shoot, so because Giannis doesn't really know how to shoot and Ben doesn't really know how to shoot, Ben could eventually have the success offensively that Giannis has. And the person retorted that the major difference between Giannis and Ben Simmons is size and a slight difference in athleticism, which allows Giannis to go to the basket and get dunks, while those same shots for Ben Simmons end up being flip shots and runners and layups. And I think the same is for the differences LeBron and Luka. A lot of what LeBron gets is easy layups to the rim because of his athleticism difference. Because Luka doesn't have that, a lot of those same attacks to the rim end up being floaters, end up being one-hand push-ups, end up being, 5-foot pull-ups. And those are just less efficient shots. So I do think that there is a difference in the way that they attack. I think the more apt comparison for Luka would be James Harden. James Harden, I don't think, there's a lot of fan bases are down on him. There's a lot of talk of trades to different places for him. And I haven't met a fan of any team that is excited to get James Harden. But I think that belies his greatness. He is one of the greatest offensive players this league has ever seen. I think 3-time scoring champion, one-on-one maven, someone who we've seen defenses where they double him at half court. This is someone who's a great offensive player. I think that is a more apt comparison. I think Luka might be a more pass-centric version of him, but I do think that their games are more apt and more similar to LeBron, even though he's a fan of LeBron. And I think I get why the comparisons are there, but I just mentioned the defense, and I also mentioned the athleticism difference that leads to layups and dunks for LeBron, that leads to one-hand push shots and floaters, and which are just less efficient shots. And with the comparison between Luka and Trey Young, if Luka is not LeBron, and if he's more like James Harden, then what happens if Luka is Steph Curry? If you've listened to any of my previous discussions about teams here, I've talked about less guards that athleticism is not their forte. Guards where they attack in different ways, more ground-bound guards. And those guards generally in league history, it's taken them time to bubble more than the more athletic guards out of the chute. So obviously that is more of Trey Young's game. He's not an athletic maven. He is someone very skilled. I think is a very, very high level passer, which is underrated in his game. So it's going to take time for him to, reach his full capabilities. And we've seen these smaller guards take leaps. I've just compared him to Steph Curry. No one expected Steph Curry to become the player that he became. This was someone who his rookie, I believe into his sophomore season in the NBA, he was someone who wouldn't play in fourth quarters, and then became MVP, the only unanimous MVP in our history. Another one, Steve Nash, someone who was a fringe all-star player in Dallas. He goes to Phoenix, he takes off like a rocket ship. So the haste to say that this discussion is over, when I do think that you can logically say that Trey Young could eventually become a Steph Curry player who was an MVP in this league. And I do think factually it's overblown to compare to Luka to LeBron. It's kind of ridiculous. And then lastly, his MVP odds. I mean, this team, Dallas, I do think it's a very talented team, but I don't think that they're going to be in the top 3-4 in the West. So I don't see how he could be in that MVP discussion. It just seems like, and I've made this comparison with my friends before, but it's just, and I think I've said it in one of the previous things, Luka reminds me of Russell Wilson. He's a Russell Wilson of the NBA, where, this NFL season started and there was just this outpouring of outrage that Russell Wilson had never won an MVP, or he never received a vote. And I was looking at what season is the season that he got snubbed. What season is the one that he should have won the MVP? And they were just banging this, Russell Wilson MVP this year. Russell Wilson MVP campaign starting off to a good start in week 2 and week 3. Even later on in the thing, you had guys from PFF surmising, they start a run versus the NFC East, so he's going to rack up the stats and he's going to get back into the MVP discussion. It's just like, let the season play out and let's see if he deserves it. Like, what is your interest if he gets it or not? Let it play out. And it just seems like Luka is just like, oh no, MVP, top of MVP odds. Why? They first round exit last year and didn't make the playoffs the year before. Like, what in this is trending to they're going to take over the league? What in this? I just don't understand it. So as far as the Dallas team, like I said, I don't see them in the upper echelon of the West. I don't see them above the Lakers or Denver or the Clippers, or even, I've talked about Phoenix. I think these teams are more complete teams than Dallas. Now, I have liked the fact that they've kind of filled out their roster. I do think they were too Luka-centric before. I'm a big fan of Dorian Finney-Smith as a 3-and-D player. Tim Hardaway is a valuable player and is a valuable asset. And we'll see how their approach changes now that Giannis is off the table. Now they can plan more long-term. I think that the Giannis variable being removed from Dallas's equation, Miami's equation, really gives them a chance to really sit down and look at their roster and see where they want to go. I think Tim Hardaway is the obvious trade asset if they want to make a trade. So I'll be interested to see what they do with that. I did like the addition of James Johnson. I do think that he was a very useful player in Miami, kind of got out of the rotation. He is getting up there in years. He's 33 years old, but he seems like he takes good care of his body. I think as a 3-4 type player, pick and roll, probably option with Luka that could go downhill and make plays. I like that as an option. I like the addition of Josh Richardson. I think that he was kind of miscast in the Sixers with the lack of space and the lack of just general touches. I could definitely see him as this secondary ball handler for the team, and someone who can really revitalize and revive where he was. Because for a minute there in Miami, he was looked at as a semi-all-star. But in Miami, he was running a lot of point for them. The ball was in his hands. And, Dallas, they have Luka and they have Porzingis, and we'll see when he comes back. But they did need, in my personal opinion, a secondary ball handler, someone that you can potentially stagger minutes with Luka and at least provide you some scoring punch. So that'd be interesting to see how that works out. I do like their depth at the big man rotation. I'm a big fan of Porzingis, have been in a while. He's been injured enough now that you have to start having some concerns about can he stay durable. He hasn't been someone that's put on a massive amount of weight as he's gotten older in the league. And, a lot of people have hinted at that as the reason why Joel Embiid has gotten hurt so often. But, he doesn't have that massive amount of weight. So what is causing all this, recent uptick in injuries? So that remains to be seen. But I think he fits well with Luka. And, I'm kind of going to contradict myself here, but I do think they probably had a chance to beat the Clippers last year if Porzingis stays healthy. So I'm interested to see when he comes back and how he fits with this team more now that they have this, like I mentioned, a more deeper team. That their fit has always been a cause of discussion around the league because Porzingis is not really a pick and roll player, more pick and pop. And he is someone that likes to isolate at the top of the key. Does that really fit with Luka? But I think it does. So we'll see what happens. I'm a big fan of Jalen Brunson as well. They've had success with these smaller guards with, what's my man's name? JJ Barea, Ricky Boboy. Is it Ricky or Roddy? I can't remember. But Boubois, I remember him. He was solid scorer for them. So I think Jalen Brunson's a player in that same vein. So, this team is a team with some upside. I'm saying that I don't see them as a top 4 seed out west. But, you never know how anything could break. Portland's definitely up there, too, with those teams that I mentioned as well. So we'll see what happens with that. The most impactful player for Dallas, I believe, is going to be Porzingis. What is his health come back? How long does it take him to come back in the regular season? Does he – because it started to seem like they started to figure it out. This is a team that had a historic offensive rating last year, so it's hard to say that you should question their style of approach. But, I do think part of your approach is maximizing your talent behind you. And can they do that? Can they maximize the talent behind them and maximize Porzingis' talent, who was, up there in the discussions with Anthony Davis for a period of time, if you recall. So, he's definitely the most impactful player. The most intriguing player for me would have to be Josh Richardson. Can he return to that form? Does he become that secondary ball handler for Dallas? Does he thrive in this position? He's a nice player that can pair with Luka because of his defensive capabilities. But does he shoot the ball, the 3 ball well enough that teams don't leave him or are comfortable with him shooting? Because that's another issue. What is this team's closing lineup? You're definitely going to have Luka and Porzingis out there, but who are the players that buttress them? Is it going to be Dorian Finney-Smith, who is a player who I think is an interesting player who knows himself, knows his role in the league, that he's a defender shooter. So we'll see if he can have that uptick in three-point percentage, but you have him. What they do with Tim Hardaway if he stays, is he a closing lineup player? Is Richardson a closing lineup player? You want to add some more shooting onto that thing. They drafted that second-round rookie. I think his name is Tyler? What's his name? Terrell Terry. Yeah, so they added him to be the Steph Curry replacement. So we'll see, if, maybe a player like him is on that closing lineup. So they have a couple of other interesting players. Wes Iwundu, who's a young player. Maybe they can, help him develop his jump shot. Maxi Kleber, Boban. So these are all solid rotation NBA players. Trey Burke had some games where, he was an off-the-bench scoring dynamo. We've seen, peaks of that here or there. Is that something that's going to become more consistent for them? So Dallas is an interesting team. I don't see them in the top four in the West, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong about what I'm saying about Luka, and I don't see how I could be. I just don't think how you can change the athleticism part of the equation. But maybe, certain players take leaps and they get in the top four. I would not be surprised if they win the first round series. But if you had asked me to bet on it today, my guess is that they don't get out the first round. And that's not a slight on them. That's just how good the West is. I mentioned the Lakers, the Clippers, Portland, who's made a lot of additions. Phoenix, who's made a lot of additions. The Nuggets, who were in the Western Conference Finals, the Jazz. These are all, uber talented teams. So I don't think it's a knock on Dallas. I just don't see them in that upper tier in the West. And because of that, I don't see how Luka could be in the MVP discussion. But all of this remains to be seen. So that is 15 minutes on the Dallas Mavericks. 30 teams, 30 minutes. When I'm solo, it's going to be 15 minutes. But if you have any disagree with anything I said, leave me a comment. I'll explain to you why you're wrong and I'm right. 30 teams, 30 minutes. Get at us.